Welcome to the Retail Insider video interview series. I'm your host, Craig Patterson, and we're joined here today with a special guest. This is Ravi Rangan. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Centric Software. Thank you for joining us today, Ravi.
Thank you, and thanks for having us here for this interview. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
To start, can you tell us a bit about Centric Software and what your role is as the Chief Technology Officer?
Yeah, it's so my role is the Chief Technology Officer, and Centric is focused on providing, end-to-end product lifecycle management solutions to our very focused industry in fast-moving consumer goods. In our history, we've sort of evolved from apparel, fashion, to a lot of adjacent industries like footwear, consumer goods, and off late into formulated products like food and beverage. So there is a commonality of fast-moving consumer goods across these products, which allows us to sort of exploit some solution patterns. And my role here is really to ensure the end-to-end continuity of our products, because we do address a pretty large part of the life cycle, which traditionally has been siloed and developed independently, like planning and development and sourcing, and now covering both the pre-season activities as well as the in-season activities. So when you're actually selling the product, and I think for fashion and consumer goods, sometimes the product life cycle is quite short because you're just addressing a season. So there are some very unique challenges in this industry that we try to sort of really intellectualize and provide solutions to our customers for. And I work closely with across the board with a pretty very talented and focused Centric team, which includes R&D and services, which actually we actually deploy our services to our customers, also work with our customers relative to various planning activities, our customer advisory board, and marketing and sales. So it's a very multi-dimensional task, if you will. Yeah.
Now, AI is certainly a hot topic right now, just everywhere. Can you tell us a bit about how Centric Software has integrated AI across its suite of solutions?
If you look traditionally at AI, it sort of started in the old days with what we were calling expert systems, and in the last decade or so, it's evolved into machine learning, AI-based machine learning, which has been more predictive analytics. So you're sort of doing forecasting or clustering or looking for patterns in the data based on data analysis and largely statistical techniques with probabilities involved. And then off late, obviously, all of us have experienced the revolution of Gen AI and generative AI in its multimodal forms, not just text, but also vision, voice, audio, video. So a lot of modes are coming together. And if you take an industry like ours, fast-moving consumer goods, fashion, and product development, you sort of you find that all these techniques are actually applicable and immediately provide benefits to our customers. So we've sort of evolved in this journey. We had products that did flavors of expert systems in the way we did material compatibilities, for example, when you were building a bill of material for a shoe. So if you have the last, does it work with the insole? Does it work with the heel? And all of that stuff. So you can actually incorporate the rules that really technicians have in their heads into the product. So when you as a designer are building a BOM, all these knowledge rules are applicable. So that's kind of the old world, if you will. And then off late, we've been doing predictive analytics. So this is like forecasting, looking at various influence factors, not just the traditional statistical curve fitting of seasonality and noise and trends and things of that nature, but really looking at influence factors and looking for patterns with machine learning techniques. Ultimately, there is a lot of statistics involved there, but you're actually having the machine actually learn from historical data and the patterns and give you suggestions, even in terms of assortments and quantities that you might have for assortments in different regions, based on patterns that you and I may not see immediately, but the machine learning algorithms are able to pick up. And off late, with the advent of Gen AI, we are introducing products that are really leveraging generative AI for both the creative tasks as well as tasks which might include some heuristics and logic and some computation. We did a lot of interesting use cases in the tariff world with the tariff drama playing out in the US, where we were able to use large language models with their, if you will, the world knowledge, not just generating the patterns. So being able to incorporate that, and that's quite fascinating because when you look at something like no enterprise system would own, like for instance, one of the tariff rules was around, you get another 25% tariff in the US if you are a supplier from a country that imports oil from Venezuela. Well, no enterprise system will know who imports what from whom, right? They just know about the tariff rates between different countries for different products, but they don't know in generally that, who are all the countries that import oil from Venezuela? Well, if you think about it, the world knows. The world knows, meaning the large language models, along with search, real-time search, have knowledge of that. So incorporating that into your thinking, so you can actually say, oh, my estimated landed cost is actually influenced not just by the equations that I have already predefined, but also this sort of dynamic evolving situation that if you were there as a human, you would say, oh, I got this landed cost. Oh, let me see. Oh, this country I'm purchasing from actually buys oil from Venezuela, so I need to add on a 25% tax. So you'll kind of do that, but with a lot of effort and research. And it's amazing to see the LLMs actually be able to do that on the fly because they kind of have that knowledge. So we're actually discovering some really interesting use cases from scenarios like that as well.
And generative AI has been used for product design as well, I think.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of, if you think about generative AI, it's not only addressing text, but it's also addressing vision and images and voice. So we are starting to use, with customer input, we've actually released some products which do fashion inspiration. So basically, depending on some very targeted requirements that you have, you want a skirt with these kinds of frills, etc., or you want a top with ruffles and so on, you're actually able to tap into this world knowledge and also the knowledge that we have actually harnessed through our CMI, our market intelligence tool, which has been crawling the web over the last decade and getting a lot of images, over 1 billion images. So this is not just the LLM coming in. This is also using knowledge like that to actually use the generative AI technologies to come up with, inspirations for you to consider. And you can kind of, just like you do with your use of ChatGPT, you see a bunch of images, you refine it. Oh, I don't like the ruffles here. Oh, I need to put some epaulets there or a collar on this portion of it, whatever. You can actually refine it and have the generative AI act as almost like a virtual assistant, right? Or a virtual companion. And it's really compressing the time, because if you think about what you have to do in terms of thinking about a product, sketching it, getting a 3D design out, getting something that actually looks like a virtual product, maybe even have a virtual try on, how it fits on different models of different ethnicity and so on and so forth. That whole life cycle, which in the past might have taken weeks of collaboration with different people and all of that, is literally happening in, minutes or hours through that full life cycle. So we're really working on, with some very strategic customers, on really chaining that entire workflow with generative AI, because there are pockets of technology. There's also the innovation of the workflow. So it's actually combining that. And the fact, for us, what's interesting is we're not just doing Gen AI in a vacuum. Our customers have invested in centric applications that, we have about 1,000 business objects, we call it, like styles and materials and bills of materials and suppliers and purchase orders and shipments and so on and so forth. So we actually have, the sort of the intellectual infrastructure of the company, the business rules, the data, the ethos, the principles, their standard operating procedures that have been incorporated in Centric. And therefore, to have the Gen AI and the AI work while being grounded in this is, I think, the innovation and the unique opportunity. Because you're not just saying, oh, I like this dress and, what is the material? Oh, maybe I can do it with silk chiffon or satin. what's the pros and cons of silk chiffon versus satin. You can start to use the virtual companion to get that answer. But then you don't just want to use any arbitrary silk chiffon that you can find on the web or the LLM gives you. You already done the hard work of qualifying various materials in your library. You've tested it, you've validated it, you worked with suppliers to get quotes on it, and you got swatches and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of this processes that you've done in the company. So when you do get silk chiffon or satin or cotton as a recommendation for a material on a design or anything else, leather, for instance, you really want to say, hey, what are all the things that I have in my company's database that have already been qualified. So I don't just want to pick any arbitrary. So I think having the LLM have the context and visibility to what you've already done is, I think, some of the grounding uniqueness. And I think when you're working in an enterprise, that is fundamental. So even though we're not, core technology researchers for AI, we do think working at this interface of how are you grounded within your company ethos and your company data and process and business rules and policies, et cetera, is fundamental to exploitation in enterprises. So I think that's very exciting for us. And I would just add that one thing that I've been, one observation that I was reading about in a paper recently is with a lot of technologies, they kind of come in from from some industry or other. They've invested and they've sort of pushed it, and the users in the company end up using it. Here it's almost the reverse. It's like you and I and our kids and grandkids are using Gen AI on a daily basis. So the adoption curve is moving the other way around. In other words, consumers are already sort of adopting it in various things. And now that's trickling into the enterprises and even the government, right? So you sort of have a reverse osmosis of adoption and diffusion compared to other technologies that we've faced with in the past, where there's been a targeted industry or a government enterprise that's been pushing the internet or pushing, dynamos or generators, in the Thomas Edison days. So here it's happening the other way around. It's the consumers who actually know a lot more about how AI works than the companies in the context of their processes. So I think that's fascinating for us to sort of explore and learn from.
And now Centric Software positions itself as an end-to-end solution from concept to conceptualization. Can you walk us through a bit of the journey and what it's like on your platform?
Absolutely. I think what's interesting about, PLM is traditionally, PLM started off saying, oh, let's get a handle around all the product development content, specifications, bill of material, product definition, briefs. And it stayed there for a while, and people were using spreadsheets for a lot of other things. And we've sort of extended it to say, no, you're doing sourcing with it, you're doing multi-sourcing, you're collaborating with suppliers, you're getting quotes, you're getting samples. So you're extending the reach, if you will, within the life cycle. Then you're doing quality testing, maybe with third-party houses like Bureau Veritas and Intertek and so on. So you want to get that in the context of very fine-grained testing that you're doing. What are the qualifiers of the test? Did it pass, fail? How many rounds of testing? So the quality is coming in. And then on the left-hand side, you're doing the planning. You're sort of establishing the targets, and you're establishing, which stores or which countries or regions am I going to allocate these products to? What's the revenue going to be? How am I going to actually push product development to develop something for me to meet my revenue goals? Maybe 80% of them are carryovers and similar to what I had before, and the 20% are novel products. So all of that happens and is defined in the planning side. And then these are all pre-season activities. And then finally, when the product is done, you commercialize it. You put it on your website, or you send it out to your brick and mortar retailers. You have to have the market copy, the photographs, the marketing stuff that goes along with it. And then you're actually in season, or you're launch the product and you're selling the product. And there's a lot of activities happening there. You're constantly optimizing price. You're constantly dynamically looking at inventory. So really that end-to-end journey, traditionally there's been planning systems that have done only planning and PLM systems that have done PLM. and in-season optimization system that have done stock and inventory management and replenishment. So I think the end-to-end is really to sort of force a level of, as we're intellectualizing all these product lines, force the continuity, the consistency, the cohesion, and I dare say the completeness of all the processes and the data that flow through that channel. And I think that's really the excitement here, because we've really have all these pockets of application that we've developed and acquired over the years, and now we're really in this end-to-end continuity, which is a new thing in itself, because people normally procure systems within each of the silos I described. So one of the transformation journeys, I believe, is looking at end-to-end and not just seeing it as, oh, I got A and B and there's the data that flows between A and B, but also that there's in that space between those two systems, there's a lot of stuff that have happened that have been tribal knowledge and have just happened, by people. But when you really intellectualize it, you find there's some transformational use cases that belong in that interface between two different silos. And we're actually finding out that, for example, between planning and PLM, there's the planning slots. You got to deliver 1 million for this placeholder, 1 million for that placeholder in terms of revenue, and therefore you design this style and colorway, et cetera, to align with that allocation of revenue. But then there's a design direction element, which kind of happens through tribal knowledge. It doesn't get captured in systems traditionally. They just pass on the targets and they assign the products to it. Now we're finding, hey, there is a design. If you want to ensure the continuity and the cohesion and the consistency and the completeness of it, looking at it as one system, you have to worry about the design direction. So you have to you're now enabling new processes, which frankly people were doing in ad hoc ways, that you're now able to formalize. And by formalizing it, you're providing us additional use cases and assistance to our end users and customers. And in the process, you're enhancing the kind of feedback loops and closed loops and continuity and cohesion that you're able to do as a result, which otherwise it's almost impossible to do, because you don't know if 4 slots are going to be satisfied with one style with 4 colorways, or 2 styles with 2 colorways each, or 1 and 3, and so on and so forth. You have all these variations that, unless you specify them explicitly, they just get resolved later on. But in between, you don't know, right? And that's what we're finding. There's a lot of innovative use cases at each of these transitions. And that's another innovative part of this end-to-end. It's not just tying them up and saying, oh, I need to send the placeholders to the PLM system so they can do the design, and I need to send the products back so they can do the allocation. It's really saying, hey, I've got a design direction that's a missing piece. How do I enable that? And that's happening at different points between PLM and our commercializing tools like the PIM and the PXM tools. It's happening between the way the PXM tools deliver the product feedback and the digital shelf analytics from the Amazons of the world, the Shopify's and the social media sites, because we're getting feedback from them. How do you channel that feedback back into the planning and the PLM process? So in some cases, you might actually be able to react and tune your products based on that feedback, which is very contextual, because you're getting feedback very specific to product X, Y, Z of this color and this size, right? So that's also very powerful.
Now, are you finding that more retailers and brands, including particularly in Canada, are becoming more open to adopting AI-enabled tools?
To be absolutely frank, I think it's still early days for AI. We are getting a lot of excitement, and we're engaging with customers on AI products, because as they separate some of the myth from the reality and see the benefits, there is that interest. In fact, interestingly enough, you mentioned Canada. We actually had our last customer advisory board in Montreal last year, at the end of the year, where we invite several of our customers, and and in fact, out of, as I recall, out of 13 use cases they voted on, the top 9 were AI related, and we had several Canadian customers in the mix, including retailers. In fact, I think all of them were both the retailers as well as designers and manufacturing their own products. So they had private label lines. So they kind of represented the full gamut, if you will, of our customer base, except perhaps the OEMs, the manufacturers who tend to be in Asia. And we did have participation from our Asian customers as well at the CAB, at our customer advisory board. But yes, I think, in fact, with some of our Canadian customers, there was an explicit use case where they are actually adopting our AI, and they're actually asking for some interesting use cases which are really leveraging, populating various attributes from just deciphering it from the image, rather than you and I typing in a bunch of things about this thing that I'm showing you, this shirt or this product. The AI can look at that and give you all that information and auto-populate it. So we're looking at that now. We have to be careful there, because along with AI comes, it is ultimately a probability engine. So the probability is not 1; it's less than 1. So you have to have a human in the loop to validate the results and make sure that things are in compliance. Because this is not something like, you're not doing a recipe to make, a dish. You're actually creating stuff for the enterprise. It has to go through regulation. There's a lot of compliance issues that need to be considered. So, there is a level of validation that one has to do with the AI. So I think as you look at AI in the enterprise, I think this whole question of a human in the loop becomes important, at least for the time being.
Now, and also there's some people have this concern that AI could replace jobs. How do you address that concern while recognizing that AI is also going to be great for productivity as a tool?
There's been a lot of viewpoints from different angles on AI. When I survey the literature, on the one side, I can kind of think of 4 axes. There's the AI snake oil type of wing, where there's a lot of stuff going on, where AI is giving, output that isn't very reliable, sometimes to dramatic effect. Then there's the AI utopia, where you have a lot of people, basically claiming that by 2027 the world will be transformed. So 2027 is 2 years away, right? And so anyway, that's the kind of optimism or the utopia view you see. There's a dystopia view, which is, there's a lot of other issues because of safety, and we as humans, we get pleasure from working. So it's not like, I want to automate your work. I mean, it's like, okay, if I'm going to sit and have my favorite thing to do all the time, that itself can get boring. So I think we have to strike a balance between that. I think what I subscribe to is this viewpoint of AI as normal technology. There was an interesting paper on that by some Princeton researchers, where they looked at various technologies over the last 200 years, which have caused revolutions, right from the Industrial Revolution, the internet, the power of the steam engine, the electricity being white. So there's been revolutions, and when you start observing that, you can't underestimate the adoption and the diffusion curve, especially in enterprises. So I think it takes a while. I mean, it took Thomas Edison's dynamo about 40 years for it to become mainstream, even though one could say, it's there, electricity is flowing, let's just adopt it, next second we're getting, but it took a long time, right? So I think there's an adoption. So I kind of subscribe, while we see all the cool stuff that's happening with AI, to really make it work in the context of your processes that you've sort of found to work for your product and your customer base, et cetera, and bring it in and make it hum with that in consonance and get the continuity and cohesion with that. There is going to be the adoption and the diffusion of making sure that works in the context of the grounding that needs to happen. So I think we'll get the benefit. I'm getting the benefit on a daily basis, with AI. Uh, what does it do? It's not eliminating, I mean, it's allowing me to focus on things that are more important, that I get to increase the quality of the effort. I get to cycle things faster, but I have to review it. But I also reduce the cycle time on the throughput. And I think that's kind of, and then like everybody's going to be doing it, not just me, right? So it's going to be the new equilibrium. And with the new equilibrium comes things that, frankly, you and I can't predict. And there's been a lot of prediction out there, but you know, like somebody once said, it's very hard to predict the future. So I'll go with that.
Let's talk a bit about the future of Centric Software. Are there any innovations or market segments that you're excited about as you look ahead?
Yeah, I think one of the things, as I just described, is this continuity of end to end. There are transformations there to be extracted. I think we are, applying our technology to different, through the early design phase to the in-season phase, and also getting into new areas like retailers with multi-category products, where you are doing various levels of definition at a breadth level, but also at a depth level in terms of defining your products, be it hard goods, soft goods, be it formulated products, food and beverage, cosmetics, etc. So we are addressing that spectrum of product line. We're getting into new domains like consumer electronics, which interestingly, not the systems engineering part. We're not trying to be systems engineers and do the actual engineering of it. But it's really, when you think about consumer electronics, I mean, you look at headphones now, or, some of the companies, there's a lot of fashion statements in there, right? There's colors, there's new trends, there's artists, images and logos imprinted on it. So with that, so we are seeing a fusion of a lot of things that hit the consumer side, where some of the capabilities we have come into play, even though traditionally one may not have viewed that as, oh, that's really a fast-moving consumer good angle that I have to play with. And I think consumer electronics is a good example of that, where we are starting to get some traction. We are finding that as customers look at the full breadth of the assortment, they can still do the full depth and the engineering in their, with their existing tools. But as they look at the breadth of the products, the assortments, the variety, the colors, the fashion elements, the competitive market forces that we provide intelligence on, we're actually finding that, there's a lot of adoption benefits from something like what Centric has to offer.
Now, for retailers and brands that are listening that might be curious about Centric Software's offerings, where can they go to learn more and start a conversation?
I think we'd love to hear from you. You can visit our website at centricsoftware.com. It's one word, centric without a space, software.com. And you could navigate the website, and you could also request a demo and get in touch with us through the website.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today. This has been Ravi Rangan. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Centric Software. Thank you so much for joining us, Ravi.
Oh, absolutely loved it. And I look forward to hearing more from your audience. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, everyone here today, whether or not you're watching this or listening to this. This is the Retail Insider video interview series. I'm your host, Craig Patterson. I'm the founder and publisher of Retail Insider. Thank you again for being with us here today. Take care and bye for now.